Okay, great. Hello, everyone. We are in the serials module for non-circulating serials. I am Sarah Childs. I am from the Hussey Mayfield Memorial Public Library in Zionsville. I've got my email address on the screen. You may know me with as being at zionsvillelibrary.org. That still works, but we're sort of shifting over to HMMPL.org. So I've got that here. And there is our lovely library on another beautiful fall day. Okay, so the serials module. So why should we use the serials module? We wanted to do it at HMMPL to make our newspapers discoverable. We didn't previously have them in the catalog. We wanted to make serials check-in easier and just, hey, this is an option in Evergreen and why not give it a go? So get more out of the ILS. So we used to do this very differently, and this was sort of one of those things that we kicked off because of the pandemic, like probably a lot of you are experiencing, that you're changing the way you do things. So we receive a number of different newspapers. They're on multiple delivery schedules. Some are weekly, some are daily, some come a few times a week. My department, technical services, orders them, but they're received by reference staff. And so there was kind of a communication gap going on. And people used to just check them in on index cards at the reference desk, and then they got shelved and on the second floor, whereas tech services is on the third floor. So we didn't necessarily have a good system in place for communicating when they didn't get received, because tech services is the one that then communicates with the vendor. And so we wanted to help sort of smooth the communication gaps and just make it a more streamlined process. Reference staff didn't always know what papers would arrive on what days. We didn't always know when we weren't getting things or when things were arriving damaged. And also because the newspapers weren't cataloged, patrons didn't know which ones we got. And the only way they could find out is if they came to the library and looked at the shelf, or if they actually asked somebody who works there. And I'm a cataloger, so I like things to be in the catalog. So for me, this was a win-win, that now if you're like, I wonder if the library gets the Indianapolis Star, if you look it up in the catalog, it shows up, because yes, we do get the Star. So that was a big part of it, was I wanted them to be discoverable. So there were a lot of good reasons to do this. One reason to maybe not do this is it did take a lot of work to get going. There was a lot of setup involved in adding the serials to Evergreen. It's not necessarily a user-friendly process, and there were a lot of things that I had to figure out along the way. So the first step that you have to do is you have to have a receiving template. And you have to use serials administration. Now, I'm a Cat 1, and Cat 1s automatically have the permissions that you need to use serials administration. And so many of you may probably already have these permissions as well. Other types of users will need to have serials permissions added. Like our reference librarians, to receive the serials, we needed to make them a serials administration and add that to their user profiles, their logins in Evergreen. Now, so the setting up the receiving template, I say this is the dumb part. So to do this, you go to the administration menu and you choose serials administration. There's two different options in serials administration. So this is the first one you want to do, and that's the serial item templates. And when you click it, so it shows this, and because I have a serials items template, you can see mine listed here. When you go there, it'll be your owning library and there will be nothing listed because you won't probably have ever created a serials item template before. But then you'll just you'll click create template to do this. And I say it's dumb because since I'm doing this for non-circulating materials, I'm not barcoding my serials. Like, honestly, this part, like, it shouldn't be necessary, but it expects you to have a receiving template. So you have to create item information, even though we're not actually creating item information when we do a non-barcoded serial. So, but there's
Anita, I think we may have we sorry, not Anita, Sarah, I think we may have lost your audio here.
I would want it to be if I were barcoding these items, which, like I say, I'm not. So
can you hear me, Sarah?
Yes.
Apologies for interruption here. I think you cut out for about the last maybe 30 seconds or so here. We lost audio there.
I paused a little bit because it did tell me my information was unstable. Okay. My connection was unstable. So hopefully you didn't miss too much. But basically, I was just saying, I set this up as if I were actually going to barcode the items, even though I don't barcode my non-circulating serials. So you can see it says, I don't think it actually matters if you're not barcoding your serial. And if it's a non-circing serial, don't barcode them, because then if you did barcode your serials, you would be adding item information, and the item information, like, with the serials that you do circulate, it makes the records load really slowly. One of the benefits to using this for your non-circulating serials is you don't have to barcode them. And so the records load fast, which is nice. So anyway, here's how I set up my item template. I think you could set it up any way you might like, and it wouldn't matter because it's not getting added to any actual items. So the next part is you create a prediction pattern, also using serials administration. And this part is important. So depending on how many and the type of serials you're doing, you'll probably need several prediction patterns. So there's the other option in serials administration. You just choose prediction pattern templates. And so here you can see all of my prediction pattern templates, and you can see the state libraries. The state libraries, you can see the sharing depth. Everybody can see theirs. That's the 0. The 1 is system. So just anybody at Hussey Mayfield can see mine. Other people, you won't be able to see them. When you load this, it'll just show the state library ones. So to create the prediction pattern, once you click it, then you're going to name your pattern. You want to name your pattern in a way that you can recognize it, what it is and what it does. It might even be helpful to put your branch code in there. I didn't do that. And so, like, when I look at the list, you can't necessarily tell which ones are mine and which ones are the state libraries, so you might want to put your branch name in there, or, your short code, so you can go, oh yeah, this one's mine. And then you want to add a name that's descriptive. So, like, if it's a prediction pattern for a weekly serial, name it weekly. If it's for monthly, name it monthly, etc. So you put the name in, and then you click. So you put the name in here, and then you click Pattern Wizard, and then you've got this. Then this prediction pattern wizard opens, and you can see there are all these different tabs. Over here that I cut off, there's a back and next button because it won't let you click between the tabs. You have to go forward sequentially, or you can go backward sequentially, but you can't just jump around. So for the enumeration name labels, I like this part. is another one of those things that I don't think it really matters. I clicked on this one, use pet calendar dates. You can see whether like how it describes it. So then the chronology display, here you, this is again a descriptor. So you want the level. It gives you options of day, week, month. For weekly and daily, I choose day because I want to show the date. You can see like year, month, February. So not recommended. They don't want you to click this box. Then the next thing is this MUFED indicator. And you can see on it, there's like little question marks that tells you what you're doing. This part, again, it's not really that important and you can just click next. Basically, I figured a lot of this out by trial and error. And so you can create ones and test to see what it does, because they're easy to delete if it ends up being one that doesn't work or you don't like or what have you. So then this part, this is the part that really matters, is the frequency and regularity. This is the part you're caring about. So this is going to create your prediction. So if you have a daily, if periodical, you would select daily. If it's weekly, you would select weekly. It's got like these 2 times and 3 times per week and month. And like those, I actually don't choose those. If it's a few times a day or week or month, you should actually use the use numbers of issues per year. Which this is another one of those things that I learned. Like I tried the 3 times per week for periodical that was 3 times per week, but then I couldn't say when per week. If you do the number of issues per year, it lets you choose the numbers, the days of the week that it comes. So like if you had a periodical that comes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then you, when you chose the use numbers of issues per year, you'd have to figure out, okay, 3 times 52 is 156. And then you could indicate, okay, it comes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You have to add parts for each day that here. So then once you've got your frequency and regularity, then you click next again, and then it gives you this little summary and you can click save, and that's your pattern template. So this last part of the frequency and regularity is the part that actually is important. So once you've created your pattern template, then you can use this to add records for your serial to Evergreen. So first you can look to see if there is a record already in Evergreen, like if you also get the Indianapolis Star and you want to add it to that, there's a record in there already. You can look it up, find that record, and add your holdings. If it's something that like maybe it's your local paper and you're the only one in Evergreen, Indiana that has it, so then you're going to have to create or import a record, which again, if you're the only one that gets it, there might not be one to import. If it's a national paper, it can be helpful to know the ISSN. When you're choosing the record, pay attention to the description in the record, just like you would for any other thing. You want to check and make sure the publisher's right, and like the publication dates. With serials, for the publication date, if it's an active serial, you just want to make sure that like there's not a date in both of the date 1 and date 2 boxes. If there's a date in both of those, that's a serial that's not active, so that's not a record you should use. If there's a date in just the first box, then you should be good to go. So once you find your record, then you can add your subscription. So like here's the record that I imported for the Outlook, which is a periodical that is just a reference periodical for us. So here is how you can see it displayed in Evergreen, and how you can see the OPAC view display, and you can see in Evergreen, there's this serials button. So you can go up to serials and click it, and there's a menu. And so you're actually, in this case, you're going to choose manage subscriptions. So then when you click manage subscriptions, then this is what opens. And if you don't have a subscription already, then you can see it'll say no subscriptions owned by this library. So you click new subscription. And so then, then this opens, and you're going to add the information here. And so this is where you needed to have a receiving template. So you will select that here. You're going to choose the start date for your serial. So if you want to include information for your serial going forward, then you're going to choose the start date for when as when you want to start using serials, when you want to start using serials in Evergreen to receive the periodical. So like if you're going to do it starting in January, you could put the start date as January 1st if that is the first day in that year that you're going to receive the serial. If you wanted to receive back issues because you keep an issue already and you wanted to show that's in Evergreen, then you could choose a previous date as your start date. So I chose December 7th, 2020, because that's like the first date that we currently have in the library of this periodical. So then you can see I put a label here. It requires you to put a label. So I put HMMPL Outlook. That's the name of the periodical, and then it's my library. This label doesn't really do anything, doesn't matter, but it's descriptive. So if at some point you're trying to figure out what it was, you can see what it is. So you can see like it's got the owned by and distributed at. So if you were trying to do multiple ones for different branches, you could add one for multiple branches here. And so it could be maybe owned by your system. And then I've got, this one is our Zionsville branch. And when we have a Whitestown branch, I may add Whitestown distributions for these. So it could be distributed at Zionsville and Whitestown. But right now, we just have Zionsville. So, and then you have the OPAC display. And so this is the part that really matters for how it's going to show up in the OPAC. I've got chronological, and you can click this question mark again to see what the options are. So the other thing that is something to keep in mind with the managing subscriptions is you can do an offset. So if you have a periodical that say that you receive it every Monday, but it's the Friday, but it's dated Friday, you could put the offset here so that it would show that like you're expecting it to come on Monday, but the date is actually going to be Friday. So you can use that if you want. I haven't done that for any of our periodicals, but that's an option. So then once you have these things all created, then you click save. And so now you have predictions. So now you have a subscription and you need to add the prediction. So you are going to choose one of the predictions that you already created. Or if you haven't created your prediction yet, you can do that now. So, oh, I didn't click. I don't have the manage predictions tab. So let's see. So when you click this tab, if you don't have a prediction, there won't be any below here, but you can click the create from template, or if you have templates, and those are going to show up in this drop down list here where you can see I've got bi-monthly, where there's bi-monthly is listed. So in this case, for me, this one is weekly. And so I would choose my weekly template. You can also click add new, and from here you can create templates if you haven't created one that matches the periodical that you're doing. So if you've got the template you want, then you can just, and you select it, then you can just click save. So once you've got a subscription and a prediction, then you can actually start adding items, receiving items. But I recommend that you add a regular item to your record. This makes it searchable if there are, this makes it searchable at your branch if there are any other holdings on the record. So like with the Indianapolis Star, because there are holdings, the State Library has holdings and my library has holdings. Like if you search the Star and you haven't added a holding, it's not going to come up even if you have predictions on the item. Even if you have subscriptions, if you search for it at your branch, you won't get any results. So you should add a regular item. It also it makes it look less weird because you can see that there are items showing up, and you can use this information to explain how you see that serials holdings. And then you can also, if you have the barcode, we use the barcodes. I gave our reference staff a sheet that has all the barcodes for the serials that we receive this way, and then they can just scan the barcode for that serial to find it in the catalog instead of having to search Indianapolis Star when they want to receive the Star. So here's an example of how I added an item. So you can, this is basically a dummy item. So you can see I've got the call number just says, see issues held tab for available issues, because that's how you can tell what issues we have. And then you can see the barcode, which that's the barcode that I have on the sheet. I have the shelving location. This is where you would actually go to find the Indy Star in our library. And you can see it's not holdable, but it is available. So to see the issues held tab, it's one of these green options that are down below. So if you come and click the issues held tab, you can see the holding summary, and this says what issues we actually have in the library. So basically we keep a month of issues. So you can see we have starting at October 1st, and then it shows we have October 1st and 2nd, and then we didn't get the 3rd, so it shows we don't have that one. It shows the 4th through the 9th. Then there were a couple of more issues that we missed getting, and then we have the 11th through the 28th. So this shows the issues that we currently have at our library in this holding summary. You can see it's just like a short little description instead of having 30 holdings on this record, which is what we would have if we had a barcode for each one of these issues. Since we don't circulate the newspapers, it would be a waste of time of barcodes, and it would make this record load really slowly if we barcoded all of these. And especially for libraries that say keep, years worth of issues. If you had daily issues, think of how slow that would load. So the holding summary works a lot better for the ease of using the catalog for here. Although it's a little hidden, I wish it was more obvious in the catalog. So that's another downside to the serials module, is until people learn how to use it, it's not really obvious to see what we have. So now that we have our item added, we've got our subscription and our prediction, we can actually start receiving the items in Evergreen. So to do that, you go back up to the serials tab, and then you choose manage subscriptions. So then once you get to manage, so then the serials module opens, and then you want to choose the manage issues tab. And until you receive anything, you actually won't show any below. You can see right now it shows that I've received one issue. So to receive another issue, I have to predict a new issue in order to receive it. So you click predict new issues, and then it'll show what you're going to predict. And so you just, and it should just be what you want. So you click save, and then it adds another issue. So now you can see I've got 2 received issues, and then another expected issue. So the bottom one is the next issue that is expected. So then to receive that issue that is expected, I can just click receive next. So in addition to using the buttons at the top, you can also use the action menu to apply a bunch of different other actions and possibilities. So you can select a particular one. So if, say, you've predicted a few issues and you missed one, you can select the one you missed and you can mark it as claimed. Or if you predict an issue and it's not published, like they didn't publish on a holiday, so there's not a Labor Day issue, you can mark that one as not published, or you can mark it as not held, etc. You can also from here delete items. So if you only keep a month of issues, then you can go back in and delete issues that you've previously received so that they won't show up in your holdings display anymore. And I have a procedure. I have procedures that I've made for our staff at HMMPL, and I will share those with everybody. So we'll send you that information when we send this presentation after this. After this webinar, when we send the presentation and the LEUs, then I'll also send my procedures along with that, because that goes into more detail about a lot of the things about how you can claim things or discard them or what have you. So when you mark it as claimed, obviously all that's doing is marking it. So if you want to make this work for your library, then you need to set up your own procedures. So at HMMPL, the way we do this is I set up all the newspapers so they could be received by the reference librarian. So I went in and added, that we get the Indy Star, we get the Wall Street Journal, we get USA Today, the various different periodicals that we receive at the reference desk. I went in and I set all of those up in Evergreen. So then on a daily basis or weekly or monthly, depending on the periodical, then they go in and they use the predict next issue. So they predict the next issue to receive it. And in order to predict the next issue, they need the serials administrator permissions. That was one of the speed bumps that we ran into along the way with this project. But it's easy enough to go in and assign that to the people that need it. If you didn't want to make the person receiving the serial a serials administrator, you could have the person who sets up the issues pre-predict a lot of them so that the person receiving it doesn't have to predict it. And then they would just select which issue they're receiving. So I'll jump back here. So you could see we've got, the 3 different serials. So you could I could put in a whole year of predictions, and then people would just have to come along and pay attention to the date and mark the issue that's being received. Select it, and then go up to the actions menu and do receive that issue. To us, we didn't want to have a ton of predictions already there, and it made more sense to us to do it on an as expected basis. So the person receiving it also predicts what the next issue is going to be. And to predict it, you just have to click the predict next issues button and then save, and it generates the prediction based on the pattern that you've created. So with this, you can see this is a weekly magazine or a weekly newsletter, I guess I would describe it as. And so it's got the 7th, the 14th, the 21st, and I'm going to go through and mark all of these received, or any that we might be missing. I'll mark as that the library doesn't hold, so that then when you look in the holding summary, it will be a reflection of what we actually have at the library. So the reason that we are only doing this for non-circulating serials is, first of all, our circulating serials were already in the catalog and discoverable. So there wasn't a lot of benefit to adding the predictions on top of just creating the issues. You could, if you wanted to if you wanted to do predictions for those serials. But because we use parts for serials in Evergreen, Indiana, the process with the item templates and the barcoding from the serials module, it would just be adding extra steps, because then you'd have to do that, and then you'd have to also go in and add the parts and as you saw, there are a whole lot of things to set up in order to get this started. So it just didn't make sense for us to do the serials that we already had set up, the magazines. We are just continuing to do them the way we always did. We already had a good system for tracking those. It's all done by one department, and so it wasn't as confusing and as much of an issue as the newspapers were. So for you, it might make sense to do predictions for serials that you circulate. That's for you to decide, but for us, it didn't seem like it made sense. So that is sort of the nuts and bolts of it. The actual setting up of the serials is a pain. But once we got started, on a day-to-day basis, it's easy and works really well for us. And it's really nice that for technical services, I can just go in and go, wait, if I have a question about what's going on with the serial, I can go and look it up in the catalog, and I can see, oh, yep, we've received all of these, or we haven't gotten this one for a month. Why hasn't the reference department contacted me about this? Or generally speaking, now that we have a good procedure in place, if we're not getting a magazine, I get contacted, but it's really handy to be able to go and look in the catalog when I do get contacted, so I have that information in front of me when I'm communicating with the vendor. So that's the basics. One of the things that I will also say is that it is super that I found the Sitka documentation online to be really helpful to take you through the steps. And so I'll link to that also, and that'll also be sent for you when you get all of this information. But that's the gist of serials in Evergreen.
Wonderful. Thank you for your presentation and all your research and slides there, Sarah. And we will be sure to get any of the supporting documentation and any other links packaged together with the presentation here. Do you have time for some questions here?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Sorry,
Yeah, I
go
was
ahead.
going to say, I can see a question here about, does Evergreen let you know when you failed to check in a serial? So no. If an automated email would be amazing, That is a that would be a great suggestion for development. And yes, boo. So that's something that we actually sort of addressed for us locally, in that when I created all of these predictions, I made a sheet for the reference desk that says, like, what are the daily ones, what are the weekly ones, what are the monthly ones, and like for the ones that and when they're expected. So like, okay, this is on Monday we expect to receive these items. So then if they are going through and receiving them and they don't get one, hopefully that triggers them to contact me. So that's how we're handling that. But yeah, like if it sent you an email when you didn't receive them, that would be really useful.
All right. If there's any questions here, please do not be shy about putting them into chat.
Yeah, I see that somebody says they don't currently catalog their newspapers, and yeah, we had never done this before, and it was one of those things where it struck me, well, like especially during the periods when we were closed to the public and we were available, like the library was available for it wasn't available for browsing and you could only access things online. It really struck me that, hey, it would be useful for people to know what periodicals we actually receive. And so one of the things that's nice about this is that people come into the library all the time for crossword puzzles. And so we copy the crossword puzzles and make those available. And so with this, now people could actually see, oh, look, they didn't get the paper today. So they know that we're not going to have the crossword puzzle. And it says, do you or could you use this for newsletters that the library keeps for genealogy, but you don't necessarily like to catalog? And absolutely, this is exactly the perfect type of use case for this, where if it's something that you haven't previously cataloged, this is a great way to add it to the catalog, because you don't want to be barcoding a million things that you're not circulating. And so it's a really handy way to succinctly add it to the catalog. These are the ones we have. And so I have done this for all of our reference ones, for all of our newspapers. And now there's a handful of other things like the Outlook that we get that aren't available to check out, that now I'm going through and adding also. So for us, that's the Outlook. We get the Mayo Clinic Health Letter, we get Value Line, and those are available in the library. But if you haven't come into the library to see what periodicals we have, then you would have no way of knowing that. And I will also say that, like, it is complicated to set up. It took me probably a couple of months to get through figuring out all of these different steps and getting all of the predictions set up. Hopefully now that I've done it, the sort of step-by-step of it, you won't be as much of trial and error for the rest of you. And also, I just feel free to contact me if you have questions about it. Now that I did all of this in like April of this year, so it's rusty, but as I'm going through right now and adding the periodicals that I hadn't added then, it's refreshing my memory. So I hopefully can answer any questions that people have about it.
Thank you for doing all the feature testing for us, Sarah. That's always much appreciated.
Well, I'm sure it's appreciated, and it's annoying because then you get all my help desk tickets.
Help desk tickets are one of the best parts of my day, although I can't speak for everyone else.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that. I know I generated a few interesting ones with this project.
While we have a captive audience here, feel free to continue thinking on your questions and typing. Oh, there we go. There's a question there. That is priority.
Okay, so it says, what do you do when the serial combines two issues and you did not expect it to happen? So that is something where you can use the actions menu. And so you could say, mark the second one is not published, or let's see. So that would be one option. I'm trying to think if there is another option. I can jump to, there is another option. So you can do add special issue. And so then the issuance label, you can use that to explain that it's like the that it's multiples, that it's like a double issue. So that would be how you could do a weird one. Thankfully, we haven't come up. Thankfully, we haven't had that come up. We have had the issue where I mentioned, like on Labor Day, where there were a few different newspapers that didn't publish, and so we had to do the not published option. Yeah, I can absolutely believe there are a lot of times when it's necessary to change the issues. One thing that's nice is that because we are doing it for just a limited number of periodicals, it hasn't been quite as complex as if you're doing it for like every single magazine that you receive. Because yeah, with the magazines, they're constantly changing the publication patterns. Newspapers, thankfully, there's not as much variation. And honestly, that's another example of why I think it's great just to use this for your non-circulating serials as opposed to ones that you do circulate, because the more complicated the serial is, the more of a pain it is going to be to set up, and the more complicated it's going to be to receive.
Has anyone in Evergreen
made a good description of what to do for serials? Like I say, I felt like the Sitka documentation was the most helpful, and I'll definitely be including links to that in the slideshow that gets shared. I also intend to link my local documentation. And the reason I didn't include the links page is I haven't got the local documentation someplace that's shareable yet. So I'm going to add that slide.
Real quick, I have leveraged the power of Google to try and pull up Sitka's serials.
Yes,
is that link in there?
Okay. And they have videos, and they have just like their documentation is pretty straightforward. And it puts it in a logical order for what order you need to do things, I think. So kudos to them on their helpful docs.
There is also the official evergreenils.org documentation. Was that of any help to you, Sarah, if you stumbled across that?
Well, my recollection is that I looked at that and I found Sitka's to be more useful.
Excellent. Okay, so I will not muddy the waters then and link the official Evergreen documentation there. But
I think it was just because theirs was, more not like the I think it was because it was more nuts and bolts in terms of really using it as opposed to the sort of theory.
Yes, it's written by the trainers probably as opposed to by the developers, which matters.
Yeah, it does.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you a billion times over, Sarah, for all of your research and forays into the world of serials and sharing it with us.